Oh, what's up, everybody? My name's Josh Herman. Welcome to Gnomon Art Jam. I'm the CCO here at Gnomon, and today I'm going to be sculpting in ZBrush, making some characters. Specifically, making a character I've been working on for past several streams. Working on this to get it further along because we want to get this more finished. In case you have no idea who I am for some reason, you've never been to an art jam before, welcome. Here's a little bit. Let me gesture the right way. Here's a little bit of my art station in case you're interested in that. You can also go ahead and feel free to check me out on Instagram if you want to find some more information there. But just kind of give you a quick scroll. I've been working in the industry for about a decade, worked in games, collectibles, big MCU, AAA movies, and also on a big crowdfunded project called Star Citizen. So I've worked on a ton of different stuff. If you have any questions about anything while I'm sculpting today, whether it's career related, Gnomon related, class related, anything like that, please feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to answer while I'm working. Or generally, if they're pop culture related, I love that kind of stuff too. So let me know. I'm gonna pop open ZBrush here and show you what we've been working on. So this is the character that we were working on last stream. So I'm going to also switch our orientation here so you can, when I'm in ZBrush, so you can see a little bit more of the screen. So I'm going to put myself here so it's a little clearer. Let's get that cone out of there. This is our sort of dino character we've been working on. And I wanted to give you kind of a flash back into what we've done so far in this character. So we started out with a body sculpt. Well, we started out specifically with a head sculpt, which kind of looked like this-ish. And we ended up, adding a body to it. We've been slowly, last stream, adding some teeth to it so we can open up the mouth, do some fun things with that soon. But we also had created a costume for it. So this is our costume for this character. We're working inside out, so we're basically creating the body, the nude body, and then we're going to add elements to that. And to give you a little more insight, here's the color as far as how I'm thinking things will end up looking. So this is our character so far. Hello there. Hello, everybody who's joining the stream. Welcome. I'm perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So this is our characters. And one of the things that I want to do today is, since we're working inside out on the characters, we're going to try to finish this body and finish this anatomy so that we can then get onto the costume and not have to worry about going back to that over and over and over. So I did go ahead and pull up some reference for myself, and I'll give you a little example of why the body has changed and what I'm hoping to finish, right? Somebody asks, have I heard the latest Elon Musk tweet? No, I have not heard the latest Elon Musk tweet, but if you're asking me, it must be pretty interesting. So the body that we did kind of goes like this. I'll turn on all the additional pieces. Also, you all should be hearing music, so let me know if the music is too loud or too quiet, or if there's anything wrong with that. So we had sort of sculpted this very traditional bodybuilder, muscly character, and so now it was working, but I didn't really feel like it was fitting the overall gestures of the character, and it just felt a little too typical. So since we were kind of trending in a reptilian direction, I decided to adjust the body, which is what I did last stream. But I also decided to kind of take it a little similarly but differently. So you can see going back and forth between these two, the proportions are slightly different, but generally what I've been using is a lot of reptile reference, frog reference, and stuff like that, so that there's a slight difference to it. I like how the profile itself has changed, whereas before it feels like this is more a classic bodybuilder, and this is sort of has more of a gesture to the body, and it feels thinner. And so the goal of what I was doing here was basically trying to bring in that reptilian influence. So if you look at some of these reference images, for example, I just really love how reptiles, and we'll look at some of these, the creatures here, how they're very thin, but they're kind of like an egg shape, like an oval shape, the opposite direction, or similarly, I guess, how a human's rib cage is, but they have a sort of a certain taper to their bodies, and so I wanted to integrate that into the character. So that's kind of what we're doing. Generally, I have some more reference here. We can flip through these really quickly. I want to explore playing with some ridging, and some, as we finish the anatomy, some textures and differences for color. So that's kind of what this reference is. just general scale patterns, potentially color patterns. I really love that. This is another one of those. I think it's a crested, crested gecko. Love the eye, beautiful eye color and shape here. But again, that kind of cresting with like creating two different areas is something I'm interested in. I just love this face, so I might use this, like the intention of the face. The idea of not really having scales. This is a scaleless lizard, I believe. I don't remember what it's called, but how this kind of skin could fold if we want to incorporate some of that stuff here. This is a couple of them stacked on each other. I felt like this was sort of like the sliding scale of like lots of spikes, less spikes, no spikes. So all in one reference image, which I kind of liked that. Just two monitors giving each other hugs. Pretty big fan of that in general, but I love actually what you can see I called this eyes. How there's a very clear coloring around the eyes that kind of jets back into that ridge. So that's probably something I'll end up taking from that image. Some more coloring on these. I love the colors on this python. Also the transitions to the front and then back to our leathery fellow here. And then sort of a regal lion. Right, he's not going to have hair, the character won't, but he has sort of this coat that would be on it that I think would be a pelt, and so I just kind of liked the gestures of how this could flow. Thought that might be an interesting thing. Some more colors and ridging here. Oh, and birds. Just I love the skin and the texture, and there's something in here that could really work. So just kind of going to be pulling inspiration from a lot of this stuff that you see right here in my reference folder. You can use Pure Ref, you can use Quadro, you can use whatever you like. Sometimes I just use a folder and just kind of go through them and use one image at a time. As you'll see in the chat right now, one of our Gnomon representatives, Adam, is here. If you have any Gnomon related questions, Adam can help you out with those. I can also answer them myself, but to get more in-depth conversations or maybe a more in-depth answer, Adam will be able to help you out. Somebody was saying Spider-Man Homecoming that I made, was it for games or was it for the movie? This was for Spider-Man Homecoming. Actually, this is not, that's a lie. I made this Spider-Man for Spider-Man Civil War. So you can kind of read a little bit of the description here. But this was the suit that we were told that Spider-Man was going to be in the movie, and so we needed to make a suit for him so they could get a costume made. And so this is the design that Ryan Meinerding made, and then I made the 3D model of it so they could get the costumes made and get a final approval for the character. So even though this isn't what the Homecoming and Civil War suit looks like, this is what it was going to look like before they changed some of, like, there's, if you're a big Spider-Man fan, you probably know there's like these black rubber sort of like shoulder elements here, and they've kind of changed up some of the design, but the majority of it is actually the same. I mean, like, especially in the face. Something that Ryan really wanted to get across, and that was the idea, which I think he pulled off really, really well, was the idea that Spider-Man's eye shape could change. That wasn't something that had ever really been done in the previous Spider-Man films, but was a huge thing in the comics and a huge thing in the TV shows, was allowing him to emote, right? Allowing Spider-Man to emote while in a mask rather than just being a lens that's popped on there. And so his idea was to basically create a lens or an iris style of thing on the mask that could change shape. And so this is what we ended up going with there, but it was a fun project. Adam Hinsel, I think you're talking about Adam Hartel, if you're talking about who's in the chat. Good to see me again. Was wondering where I went after CIG. Yes, I left Cloud Imperium about 2 years ago, almost. In August, it'll be 2 years. I've been working at Gnomon ever since. So, yeah, this is some of my work. Feel free to check out my handle on pretty much everything is Droids for Sale, so you can go ahead and check that out. Also on Instagram. If you see something on my work while I'm streaming today, or you're browsing ArtStation and you have questions like you did just now, please feel free, like I said, to ask questions, and I'll try to do my best to answer them. All right, let's go ahead and work on this character here. We're going to try to finalize that anatomy, like I said. So I spent some time off stream, if you've been watching before, going from this style of anatomy to this. We did a major adjustment last stream but I want to basically finalize this, and I'm pretty happy with how this is going. What I like about it actually is that from the front view, let's start in the profile view. The profile view, the character feels more traditionally muscular. And when you switch to the new one, it kind of feels less so, like more lean and thin. But if you switch to the front view, this feels like also a classic kind of bodybuilder with this big V shape in the waist. But the new one actually kind of feels more muscular rather than being thinner. You know, it feels thinner from the side, but more muscular from the front. And in 3/4, it's probably about the same. So I kind of like that there's this change depending on the way that the character is. And that mostly comes from using a lot of frog reference. Here, the anatomy here. And that's to change the way that the legs are. I've also adjusted some of the proportions in the limbs. So these sections are going to be much shorter, and these are going to be much longer. So this is much shorter, and this is much longer now. Whereas before, it was kind of about the same. So you'll see this is about the same, and this is about the same. Kind of if we use this block as a measuring device, you can use that here as well and see that they're roughly the same, or they used to be. And now they're a little different. That one's a little longer, but this should be more clear. Still kind of the same, but you'll see there's a different type of proportion there anyways. What shader is that? This is a ZBrush shader. There's several of them. Z1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I found them on ZBrush Central a long time ago. I think if you just type Z1, let me see if I can just find it really quick. Z1 MT, like probably ZBrush material. Z1 ZBrush material. It was in an old, not the matcap library, but it was probably on a thread like this. Just on ZBrush Central right now. Sebetone. There's this one I found. I'm going to paste this in the chat in case you really want to dig in there, but that seems to be the link. It looks like there's a bunch of matcaps here. So I don't know what these will be, but Z1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way, well, 1 through 9, and then 91 through 98. So that might be where you can find those. All right. Do I have any personal sketchbooks you can share on stream with us? I do not have any personal sketchbooks. Apologies. My sketchbook is mostly 3D. I can go through some things really quick before we jump into this anatomy and kind of show you the way that I sketch is not in pencil because it's really just scribbles, or at least that's the way that they kind of come across. But I can just load up a couple things and kind of show you a bit of my process if that's helpful. So here's many things that we've made on stream. I don't know what any of these are because I've randomly named them. So some random vampire devil thing. Let's see what else we got in here. This is called Creature 1 or 2. Oh, I made this on stream a couple of weeks ago. I've got a couple other things in here. Let's see what this creature is. This one I ended up actually using. So I've been watching Neil Gaiman's Masterclass from Masterclass. And he said something really interesting in that, which was kind of the process or the thought process of creating characters and worlds and all that kind of stuff. And something that he said was, I'm just going to snapshot all these. I'll make it easier so it's not like I'm just popping them all around. Something he said was, putting you take an idea, you get it out, and you put it on your compost heap. And so for me, this is kind of my compost heap, which is, I don't know if I'll ever use any of these, but they're ideas that I worked on and that I got out of my system in a way. And then, it's here. And eventually compost heaps rot and they turn into something that is, brings life, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I don't even remember so many of these. We've done so many streams now, and I've sculpted a bunch of different stuff on every stream. So just pulling up a bunch of things. If you have any interest in watching any of this stuff, it's all going to be on YouTube. on our playlists. So go ahead and check out those. Yeah, no sketchbooks. I know it's sad, but is what is this one? Oh yeah, I like this one. I'll give one last one we got up here. This is a fun one I did. It's more of a piece, a gestural piece, a little exploration there. So all these are done on stream, and this is kind of how my sketchbook is. I do have actual physical sketchbooks around. I don't really use them. Most of what you'll see is drawings that kind of look like this. I'll just maximize myself, or at least put us in this view really quickly. This is what my sketchbooks kind of look like. That's enough for me to at least understand what I was doing or what my plan is. Moving into 3D, sometimes can take a little bit of extra time. So that's how I work. I don't necessarily need to do 2D work for myself, just enough to get myself started and have an idea of where I'm going to go. I'm going to make myself full screen though, because to do some 3D printing. You can see over my left shoulder here, there's a 3D printer. It's a Form 3. Just got that set up this week. Printing let me load this one up before I show you what I worked on. My network connection does say it's a little low right now, so apologies in advance if there's anything weird. I'll try this one. I have to restart ZBrush for sure after this. No sketchbooks, that's sad. Wow, that's some cool work. Thank you so much. If it's better to subtract or add during form question, I'll definitely get into that in a minute. How long does it take to make those characters? Each of the characters you've seen here, if I go back to this view, each of the characters you'll see here was made in 3 hours or so. That's not the one I want. So this is sort of a battle scene. It's actually holding up pretty well, all those things in the background. I did this robot, and so this is a robot that I had actually, it's very decimated, so the model itself is quite low. But I 3D printed it just the other day, and I'm pretty happy with how it looks. So I'll show you that right now. So it's using the Form 3. It's a little bigger than last time. See how close I can get it with it getting my face in the way. But it ended up turning out pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with the details. It's about 3 inches tall. I did do another smaller one before when we were using the Anycubic. So you can see the difference of the size of the two. And this is the tiny one, which is pretty solid. You can see the sword broke off. Well, but details there are pretty good. And this is the new one, which is obviously much bigger. Try to not shake as I get it in camera. But it ended up turning out really nicely. It's pretty decimated though, so I'm happy with the amount of details that I needed to sculpt there. How long does it take to make those characters? You have about 3 of each. These are not final characters, by the way. I think that's an important thing to call out. You could spend hours on these. I am concerned that the stream is down, just so you know, because my internet says it's very bad right now. So I'm going to run a test. So let me know if for some reason I'm not there. If you can't hear them. Yeah, it says I have a 0 out of 10. Then my upload is not amazing. Somebody says you can't hear me. Good to know. We'll run into some issues here with our upload speed. It should be back in a minute. Apologies for that. Oh, we can do this though. While uploading. 0 out of 10. I had an internet outage yesterday. which is always fun. A planned internet should be fine. It should be fine. Let me know if there's issues. I was going to say we could do this, though, so you get a better sense of the print. Let's see if I can do this. Hang on. Get it in the right spot. There we go. So pretty happy with that. I'll spin this one around real quick. Why is the stream so laggy? My internet is being really weird, and I don't know why it's being super laggy. I'm testing my internet speed right now, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. That's my download. My upload says it should be fine, so I'm going to keep working. If there are internet issues, let me know. If for some reason the stream crashes or there is anything wrong, like I said, let me know. Not much I can do to control the internet. All right, what are we doing? We were sculpting. Now I've loaded up way too many things in here. So let's go back to what we were working on, which was this character. I'm probably going to have to reload this up just because there's so many other files in here now. So I'm just going to initialize ZBrush. That'll basically wipe out everything here in case you've never done that before. And then we'll load up some tools. Can you ask about forms? Yes, of course you can. Of course, of course. The answer to that is there's not a better one. Versus adding versus subtracting. That is just a personal choice. I have found that I personally do a little bit of a more adding or additive sculpting. The reason that there's not really a one that's better or one that's worse is because just think about traditional sculpting. There's multiple types, right? So if you're sculpting from clay, you're sculpting often from nothing. You'll sculpt from an armature. Maybe you put tinfoil. Maybe you put something in the middle. Then that's your only adding. It's only additive. You can obviously carve away once you get into that. Subtractive is like the classic thing of sculpting something from wood or sculpting something from marble, right? Those are both viable ways of sculpting. It's just about how you prefer to build and chisel your forms into the shapes that they're going to be. So it's not necessarily that one is better or not, but sorry, getting tech questions from our producing team here. Just letting them know what's going on. Yeah, it's just very different depending on what type you want to sculpt in. I find myself doing a little bit of both, though. I find myself kind of building up something and then chiseling it down and building it and moving. I think that there is sort of a third style that was not available in a traditional medium. And what I mean by that is being able to move a form. When you're sculpting in clay, you can sculpt a whole arm, and if you want to change the shape, you have to or change the scale or change the size or change the proportions. Pretty much like if I'm talking about like what I did for this model, I'll load them both up again so you can see the differences. So let's say we have this model. And we have this model. Similarly proportioned, but very different. And if you were to sculpt them in clay, that would have basically been an entirely new sculpture. But what I find is that I think there's a third style of sculpting now, which came out of digital sculpting, which is the ability to move a form. So, if I sculpt something, I sculpt this shape, and maybe adding forms, I may also be subtracting forms to define what it's going to be, but I can also just move it. right? And this isn't something that was really doable before you could sculpt digitally. And so what I'll often do is I'll sculpt something even similarly to what we have here and say, like, I know that I want I want a general humanoid anatomy, but I want to adjust it to this. So somebody's saying that was the same model but moved. Yes, it was the same model that moved. So what I did here was basically sculpted very traditional bodybuilder ripped person anatomy, and then took all this stuff and began moving it. So this isn't necessarily, I can change these shapes, I can change these arms. I can make them super long. This is stuff that isn't really definable in, additive or subtractive. I'm just making changes at this point to just make changes so they're very clear, right? But this is a very different type of sculpting, if that makes sense. So, where were we? Let's undo all those changes because I wanted to have the before. There we go. All right. We're half an hour in. Let's start sculpting on this character. I want to finish a little bit on the hands today, and then I want to get into some details. I don't necessarily need to finish the hands today. I can make that a separate stream or something I do in my non-stream time. Just going to go ahead and start smoothing some of this out so I have a little bit of better canvas to work on. I did remove a lot of little artifacts that you'll kind of see in this type of a sculpt. All these little lines, all I'm doing is just smoothing them. At the end result, it'll still get kind of what I want, which is good. If you build forms, are you adding one another? Most people would typically say, like, I'm building this form, and then I build this form on top of this form, and then I build this form on top of this form. That's like a traditional crochet or inside out method. All right. Spend a little bit of time in the hands. I'm going to bring open that reference that I had. Got anything good in here for hands? Not really. I mean, I don't want to make them like this gecko's hands. These are always cool. They always have such long fingers. So maybe that's something we can change around. They kind of just end very interestingly. I love this details in here. I'll definitely be stealing some of this. I'm going to use this image as a reference over here on my other monitor. And begin sculpting. I don't necessarily have a preferred method. I kind of just do whatever works for the project. So I'm going to make an attempt to try to use some of these lizard fingers. It might not be an appealing hand shape for this character, so we'll have to see how it goes. But we're going to give it a shot. So I'm going to mask all of this off. I'm just going to begin moving it. I like to use the transpose line. This is the main thing I was noticing in that reference, is that the actual the palm, the shape of the palm, is a very different shape on a lizard, and it kind of creates more of a triangle or more like a wedge. So that's what I'm going to angle for here. What type of projects do you do, and who do you get them from? Are you asking professional projects or like just personal projects? And we got another question about sculpting hands. Oh, I have not a ton of advice, but I can give you a little bit of advice for that. They are hard, for sure. Reposition this a little bit so it maybe fit kind of what I'm looking for. Make this thumb a little longer. A lot of what you're really seeing here is me taking it away from humanoid or pure. It is still humanoid, but from human anatomy. Can I explain how major forms impact secondary forms? Yeah, we can talk about that in a little bit. Pro, like their game design or movies or local jobs international. What kind of projects have I done? I don't know if you were here when I was showing my portfolio on ArtStation, but I've worked on all different kinds of things, from games like Uncharted to movies like Real Steel, collectibles, like for Sideshow, but also for movies, a little bit of everything, really. So hard to kind of answer your question. Where do I get them from? Usually one job can kind of lead to the next. As far as sculpting hands is concerned, though, I did that. Did you do that Hulk statue? I did do that Hulk statue, yes. Sculpting hands, the best piece of advice I ever got for sculpting hands is to try to imagine them, especially at the very, very early stage, like not little, but like a robot's hand, meaning imagining the digits in each section. I guess I can put this thing on. Imagining the digits in each thing just like a perfect hinge, right? So it can obviously, you can do this, and you can adjust your finger in other ways, but treating them as if they, especially these digits down here, as if they're little robot fingers, right? And they perfectly can only bend on a hinge. And if you think of it that way, then you can have a very clear angle in between let's see if I can use my blurred self. Nope, that's not going to happen. You can kind of have a nice, very clear angle there on what's happening. The second thing that I like to do is try to give them a little bit of gesture. So you'll see what's happening in the fingers kind of here, but there's a line that goes off and then kind of slightly off and then even more off, and trying to almost create rather than having every hand be like this, which is really difficult to sculpt. That would be like sculpting like a very rigid body, and I think would be really difficult, but kind of doing this kind of a thing with your fingers just generally feels more natural, and it's also a more appealing shape. So whatever, if you want to do like monster fingers or whatever you want to do with your fingers, do that. Obviously, use yourself as reference if possible. Probably every character I've ever sculpted has a hand somewhat like my left hand because I sculpt with my right hand. And so, they probably all look like that. If it's the one I think I saw, it's super amazing. Thank you. You were probably talking about this one. This is one I sculpted. I posted this 7 years ago. So this is for the first Avengers movie. Worked with Ryan Meinerding and Charlie Wynn to combine their sculpts of the Hulk into the final version that was then shown to Joss for the I just clicked on a button for the approval of what the character would look like, and then was turned into a Sideshow collectible, which is pretty awesome. Same thing with this. So this is the Mark 7 from the Avengers, which was also turned into a collectible of a half-size statue by Sideshow, but was also made for a half-size scale print that was shown to Joss and the other executives to approve what the Mark 7 would look like in the movie. All right, hands. Let's continue with hands. So if you don't see me doing this, very often my hand will either be up or it will be right out of frame, and I'll be using it as reference. And I actually am going to switch to this hand, like I said, because I'm going to sculpt my left hand or use my left hand. Wait, that's what I meant. This is the one I want. It's just such a different orientation. Well, not super different, but it's pretty different. So yeah, pretty cool. This is my reference. Still adjusting this. I think the fingers should be a little longer. I'm a little worried that that's going to look kind of creepy. Long. This is supposed to be an anti-hero, but maybe, maybe the weird long fingers will do something. So let's give it a shot. Already feeling more lizardy though. I might even consider, while I'm at this, shortening the part of the hand here. That'll make it look like the fingers don't just like extend into eternity, which would be really awkward and odd looking. And then I have a little bit more free reign, just kind of grabbing them and pulling them. This thumb is just massive though, so I really need to adjust that. So I'm kind of looking down at my hand. You can also use the Move topological brush, which is nice because then you can do adjustments like this with a bigger brush and it doesn't affect the other fingers either at all or just not as much. Chisel these little edges off. I try to keep the joints very, very square. Going back to that little robot hand example. I do find that also working on hands, I do tend to work on the one hand. So what I could do really quickly is just turn off symmetry, mask one, and then hide one, so that when I'm rotating around, I'm not seeing it. When I'm all done, I'll just show the whole thing and just smart resim one side over. I'm going to define the knuckles on the back of the hand. So this area here, what I like to do is just kind of take the standard brush and just run it across this ridge. And I'll actually end up doing that and really using that robot hand reference, over define where the knuckles are. How do you work a hand sketch first or just hit the digital clay? I just go straight to digital clay. Kind of what we were showing at the beginning of the stream, but I just do a lot of 3D sketches. I'll spend an hour or 2 hours on something, and if I'm not liking how it's going, I'll do something different. I'll take it in another direction. I'm working on a film or something, spending 2 hours, 3 hours getting a couple sketches out to figure out which one I want to pursue is something would be often I would do every time. Define this knuckle here. I always find thumbs for me to be the hardest. I don't know why. Let's extend these other fingers though. I don't think we went far enough, and this finger is not at all the right size. So let's give that a little stretch. And then similar to the defining these knuckles, I like to define the inside ones with a kind of a concave to define where the palm will go. If I use a very square base or something like that, I start chiseling away at these. That tapering effect. They're all kind of cubes that are parts that should not be a cube. Let's go ahead and grab these digits. Probably not that one, go a different direction. Might go the same direction. Might all go the same direction. Stretch those out. Take a little step back. How's it looking? It's looking more lizardy, at least I think. From Twitch is asking, Gabri's123, what's 3, 1, 2, 3 is asking when you start, so do you focus on the skeleton first? You mean not the bony landmarks, but simple shapes of bones. Not usually, not like as far as sculpting the actual skeleton or any of them. I often will do more. I just kind of mind as far as like I want it to make sure I don't forget where those are. So focusing on bony landmark, not necessarily the actual skeleton itself. Looks like the internet back to 2 out of 10. So maybe an up and down bumpy reference down the stream. Apologies in advance. Also kind of start to see the difference. I can tell you though, even as I'm looking at this, I want that thumb to be a little smaller. And I can adjust those fingers right now that they're looking like weird pickle fingers. Yeah, my internet seems to be going in and out today. I do not like how this finger looks from a distance. It looks really terrifying. So this is something I want to keep in mind, is how I just generally don't like how this is looking. And some of that may just be the adjustment of the pose, or that the fingers, especially from this angle, are basically doing the same thing, which is kind of creepy. So we might need to just take some of them. We'll see if this helps us at all. Just breaking that so it's not the exact same position. I then put it in the exact same position. So these are clearly like thicker one direction, so I'm gonna have to work on that. I can do that with this action line, which is part of why I like it. You can just kind of thin something up really quickly. I might need to do an overall adjustment on just the pose of this hand as well, because it's just really not appealing, which is, for me, is a big deal breaker when I'm sculpting, because if I can't get into the gesture of the character, I'd rather like pronate or supinate the whole hand just a lot more to make it feel more engaging. So maybe we'll do a little bit of this. Let's kind of maybe try this a bit. So we could do this type, which is kind of interesting. If you're working in production, you won't have this luxury of being able to change the position of what you're sculpting every time, but I do find it's, for me, incredibly helpful. You know, that it's further away from the body, that's feeling a little better. So you can kind of see what I was doing till all that. Let's just go ahead and mask this side of the body. At a lower level, I'll go to deformation and I'll hit Smart Resim. You see that'll pop over. Also changing the character a little bit, which I'm okay with. I'm going to go up a level of subdivisions and I'm going to hit Smart Resim. I'm going to do that till it's done. That's just to make sure that everything is perfectly symmetrical. Appears to be. Now you'll definitely see a bigger difference in the bodies because, especially as the pose changes, you know, how the hands are working. Still got to do a lot of adjustments in here, but you can see that the character is morphing into something different for sure. You know, obviously the costume that I've spent a couple streams on, anything that's in the hand is going to have to be adjusted. You know, some of these elements here are going to have to be adjusted. I'm going to do that Smart Resim here in a little bit, but keep working on this. Push them in just a tad. All right. I'm going to smooth some of this out. There are some cool little things that are being left in here. This like a little residual wrinkling. Emphasize these knuckles. I'm going to try to finish this as quick as possible because I do want to jump to the rest of the body, ideally for the rest of the stream. So we're just going to reshape these hands, get that posture done. And we're going to just set a goal for ourselves. In 10 minutes at 3 o'clock Pacific time, we'll be done with these hands. It means you'll probably hear me get very quiet. We'll pretend up a subdivision level. We're just going to start sculpting on them one at a time. Give a little bit of a nail there, and then just start using the Damien standard brush to define it. Whether it's a talon or a claw or whatever this thing is, I don't entirely know just yet. I can always come back to it. I just want to get done with this body. Let's come back and enhance this stuff if we need to. Can you apply texture like scales later to areas without altering form? Yes, you can. Let's change this song. Not into what this little part of the playlist we're in is. And try something different. I can't do that. We're doing lo-fi. There we go. Pretend it's not here. Hello, sir. How am I? I'm great. Thank you for asking. Or what did I say? All right, we have 8 minutes to finish these hands. I actually find that putting these time constraints on yourself can be really beneficial because it makes you smart, or forces you to be smarter, or at least make a decision. I find that for myself, I've noticed that I will sit and I will noodle, meaning I'll just sit in one area and not really make a lot of progress. I'll rework the same forms over and over and over. That can be really deflating if you don't make that much progress over time. So I like to try to give myself time constraints, even if I know I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to put myself under a little time constraint so that I don't, at least for the next 8 minutes, I'm not worried about getting, the most final version of this that has ever existed. But I do want to get far enough that I don't feel like I have to come back to it right away. Some of these little pads, sometimes lizards, a lot of lizards, with bigger finger pads. So let's see what that could look like. Also thinking of the tapering. For example, what I just saw here was a very, straight shape. And so we're going to adjust that so that there's just kind of some ins and outs on that to make it feel more like there's a bone in there. Some form of structure. I like all these weird wrinkles that are kind of left from me moving it around, though. I don't know what's happening here. This one looks like a disaster, so we'll quickly try to repair this one. Just like really terrible. Look at this little fingertip with a little inflate. I'm going to hit all these with a little inflate, just trying to give them a little roundness to them. And it might add some of that round kind of thickness that I was just talking about. You can also use it as one of those, instead of using a move tool or anything, you can use the inflate brush for that type of stuff, which can be kind of fun. Five minutes for these hands. We'll be moving on. You can also mask them if that's easier for you. There's some weird forms happening in here. So I just need to come in here and knock this down. And that should be okay. Generally, lizard fingers are a lot less bony, I think. They're more like sausagey. Is that a verb? That's kind of what I'm wanting. Also notice that like this is kind of broken in this instance where the hinge is. Oh God. Where the hinge is not where like the knuckle is. So I'll need to align those. Can I ask a question? Yeah, please ask a question. You said you have a problem. I'm not sure I'll be able to help you, but please feel free to ask. Four minutes for this hand. How can I move my alpha brush from one place to another? I'm not sure what you mean by move your alpha brush from one place. Are you wanting it to roll, like create a series and a stamp? Or are you just wanting to place it in multiple areas? Thumb is really large. I like this big wrinkle. I'm going to emphasize this. multiple areas in hard surface. You probably want to use the drag rectangle, which is going to be this dots drag rectangle. So let's say you have an alpha. I'll just pick one that will be very clear if we use it. This star. So if I'm using a star, it doesn't work, right? But if I switch to drag rectangle, I was on the wrong one, sorry. Dots, go to this, alpha. Dots will look like this. This is obviously maybe not what you're wanting. If you go to drag rectangle, you'll be able to drag it out. You can also use Alt to do the same thing, or you can use the drag dot, which is basically just placing it. You can use Alt in that way as well. I think that's what you're talking about. All right, 2 minutes. 2 minutes on these hands. What should I do? What should I do? I need some not necessarily wrinkles, but let's get some like a little extra definition in some of this area, just to make it feel like I've sculpted it a little further than I did. Does he have veins? I don't know. Does now. One thing I would recommend as well, just in general with sculpting, is don't sleep on the standard brush. Standard brush is amazing. It's so good for redefining and enhancing forms that you've already sculpted. Do you usually only design characters with ZBrush or need them to use other software after sculpting the model? It depends on the need. Really depends on the need. I prefer ZBrush, so I find myself using ZBrush whenever possible. All right, how does this actually look? Not terrible, not terrible. I don't like whatever's going on here. It's really distracting, so we're going to smooth some of that out, even though I thought it was cool. And then let's see what we need to do. Let's probably just get a little quick. This little membrane. Get that humanoid membrane in there. You can see that kind of squareness coming through with some of these forms. That's okay. It's not something I necessarily want to keep long term. I don't love how this thumb looks. But for now, I think it's going to be good enough. See some of these weird warps that are in here. That's for me adjusting the anatomy, spinning the wrist. So I have to spend a little bit of time clearing some of this stuff up because I did that anatomy adjustment. I'm going to mask this hand though. Just do this piece and this piece. Go back in here. One level lower, smart resim. You see the hand over here change. Go up a subdivision level, smart resim. One level higher, smart resim. And now that we've kind of more or less got to what we wanted, we can continue working. Let's go ahead and save this as a new version. Double digits in our saves now, version 10. A couple comments in Russian. I apologize. I don't think I can, at least I believe that's Russian. I cannot read those. Default Cube asks, what would you recommend for someone who wants to be a generalist? Well, generalists require that you know the entire pipeline. So have a solid understanding of the entire CG pipeline. Know how to model, know how to texture, know how to do look development, know how to ideally be able to rig. That's sometimes not as important. Know how to animate, know how to light, know how to render, know how to composite. Milan from YouTube, can I talk to the admissions team? Of course, you got a query. Adam, if you don't mind hitting up a contact card in the YouTube chat, you can fill out this contact form and you should be able to speak with them through that. Or you will be able to. All right, let's save this. We already did that. So now you'll see the before and after body of what we did. This is before and this is after. Obviously quite a bit different in position. I'm not in love with the pose of these arms. Very stiff now. Not a huge fan of that. So I'm probably going to spend a couple seconds doing that. It is a little easier though to get in these armpits for sure. Down a little more. I don't need that, thank you. It's kind of like I'm just going to rotate these arms and see what. I'm not looking at any of this. What I'm looking at is just the hand. What angle do I want these hands to be in? Like this is kind of an interesting position. That's an interesting position. Should I even just maybe just do this? Just curl these hands in a little bit. That might be all I need to do. Back and in. Still feel like we need a little something. Let's curl them. This would be the super wide body. Kind of like that. The classic wide shoulders. A little too much. You're trying to design a primate creature. Do you have any tips on how to make interesting creature designs? Find good reference. Think about how your creature where they live, why they look the way they do, based on where they live. Do they have fur? Yes. What color is it? Why is it that color? How big are they? How muscular are they? Why are they that muscular? Why are they not that muscular? They have patterning? Why would they have patterning? That's probably one of the things I would just generally think about. That's more theory. From a reference standpoint, find a couple animals that you would want to mix with them. Look up some other animals that you think would be interesting to merge into a primate. Don't choose other monkeys, humanoids, or primates. Choose something that's a lizard, an insect, a lion. Choose something that's different and try bringing those features in. Generally, don't make it 50-50 or avoid 50-50. 50-50 is boring. So add another creature, 3 creatures, and combine them in 50%, 25%, 25%. Kind of like this position of the arms, even though I know I destroyed the shoulders just now. It's like his Dominic Toretto arms. Probably just because he's doing this now. Toretto. Come at me. This is not necessarily a pose I would want to do if I want to do extreme positions. So I'm going back and forth on like how far do I want to make it just like a pose, or it's just like he's just in this pose all the time, which I don't really love this pose, but you know what I mean. This is the pose they're in for some reason. Or, is it more of a pose where, I could do easier and better movements later, which would be something like this. So I can adjust the arms and really be able to get in and sculpt all this fun stuff. This is kind of what I also talked about earlier about noodling. We are officially noodling. I load the previous version. This is it. Just make sure I select all these subtools at the same point, and very little actual adjustment. Feels better, but at this point I'm like, does this fix the problem that I had? Yes. Then you should just stop and move forward, because otherwise you're going to spend a long time trying to fix a problem that you don't need to fix. So, no more noodling. Maya, Cinema 4D, Blender, which software would you suggest learning to begin learning 3D? Blender. I would choose Blender, first off because it's free, Christian, and then I would, there's so many resources for Blender online for people who want to learn and are beginners, from whether it's Blender themselves or somewhere else, right? There's a lot of other places that have Blender tutorials and ways to kind of work up your knowledge there, and it's a good place to begin learning 3D. So I would say Blender. His butt is a little flat, so I kind of want to fix this. Just grouping those together so that they're in the same polygroup before, or they weren't before. Let's give it a little bump. And then we're going to keep going. All right, so things we had done, or the goal for today is now to basically finish this anatomy. So again, to recap, 2 streams ago, or last stream, we went from a body type that was more like this. Select it so you can see what we're talking about. This to this is now where we're at. Moving all this kind of stuff around. So we're going to finish it. One of the things I was playing with was these ideas on the back of the head. I'm not sure I love this anymore, especially after seeing this being the body type. So I'm probably just going to erase that work. Pretend it never happened. Smooth that out. How do you sculpt back muscles? You can't find a consistent structure. Good question. Back muscles, the back is a very complicated part of the body. And I'll be honest with you, mine is more graphically correct than it is anatomically correct. It is a hard section of the body to sculpt, though. Very, very quickly, I will show you on another model what I would do. Go ahead and load this up. So not on the star, I'm going to load the actual mesh. Use the one I always use. This is my base man with shoes. This is what I actually ended up sculpting this character out of. So this eventually turned into this. The way that I did that was just over time sculpting. So back muscles. Some subdivisions. I'm going to actually, for the first one, not smooth it, and then smooth it. So it has a little more structure to it. First off, get some good reference. There's plenty of good reference, but bony landmarks are the things you always want to look for. So the first thing you're going to look for is the vertebrae, which is here, the C7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? You can kind of feel it right in between your shoulder blades. If you kind of pinch your shoulders up into the back, you'll find it right there. So this is a landmark that we're going to be conscious of. You have your shoulder blades, which are floating, but they live here. You can kind of think of them as 2 duck feet that live on the back of the body. So these are your big landmarks right here, and then you're going to have your pelvis. Your pelvis obviously sits in here, and it kind of looks like this bowl, and you have your kind of basically your tailbone. So you have your tailbone that lives in here. So that's going to be this sort of triangle that's going to live here. No real muscles live on top of your tailbone. If you go and kind of feel the top of your butt, you'll feel that. So those are the big landmarks that we're looking for, and then it's just where all the rest of the muscles attach, right? So I'm going to grab my big old anatomy statue over here. Hopefully not knock over too much on my desk as I bring it over. I'll bring it side by side so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. Right, there we got this. Great. So I'm going to have this in front of my head while I sculpt. Hey, still here. Don't worry about it. Let's keep working on this, though. All right, so what you're going to see, especially if you look kind of over here, right, this is basically the shoulder blade that's exposed. So that's that duck foot, right? This is the pelvis, or the top of the tailbone that we're looking at here. And this is that C7 vertebrae, which is here, right? So what you're noticing is there's a bunch of these underlying muscles that connect to all of this. We're not super interested in that right now. They're important to the overall form, but if you're looking for like an easy graphical way to connect everything, you want to look at this side over here. So the first thing you're going to see is the spine going down the middle. So I like to just make a big line down the middle. We'll use a different brush, so we'll just kind of connect all the way. But notice that it kind of stops here. That's because this is part of the spine as it dives into the body. So we'll go all the way there. Okay. The next thing you'll notice, I'll bring this down just a little bit. There's really large triangular or diamond shaped, if it was two sides, this thing that's going to go all the way across. This is your trapezius muscle. This is your traps. If you've ever seen really strong muscular people that have these big muscles sticking out here, it's also what makes you look much larger, you know, from the front. So this is the same muscle right here wrapping. Let's see if I can rotate this the right way, all the way around to the back. And so if you've ever had back pain or anything like that, neck pain, you're like, my neck hurts down, my back hurts down here, but I can't move my neck. That's because this is all the same muscle. So if you have a weird spasm in here, you'll have a significant amount of pain. So what I like to do is kind of start blocking that out. So let's start up here. I'm going to do this very roughly. It's not going to be the best anatomy sculpt you've ever seen, but a little bit of the spine in here, right where all this is going to connect. We have this big bump, which will illustrate. And this is going to connect, as you'll see, this ridge here. If we pull this off, I don't think it'll illustrate anything inside, but this ridge right here, notice how it's exactly the same over here, is the top of the shoulder blade. So the shoulder blade actually has a line in it where parts of the body attach. In the front, you have a collarbone. So this might help you. You see this right here. This is your collarbone. It ends up connecting here to your scapula or your shoulder blade. So as you kind of rotate around to the front, that's your collarbone all the way, creates this little flat spot right here, attaches here. And now you can kind of see the difference of what I'm going to illustrate here is this is the same as this, and you can see this trapezius attaching to the bone. So that means we can basically say, we know there's a line here. Let's start drawing large muscular shapes from this point. You can kind of see where they're originating to that. We can know that they do come around if we want to get all exaggerated with them. And then they kind of make this overlapping form here. So I'm actually not going to carve up with those because it's going to be hard to illustrate, but I'm going to use this carving tool to say this is kind of where these would go. And they would attach, and they would kind of go this direction. So that's your first muscular graphical shape. The second one that I like to point at is this one, which is the latissimus. Right, these are big wing shapes. These basically go all the way from underneath your body, and you can grab them, and they go all the way into your armpit. Right, so you can basically draw this all the way from the armpit like this. That's another big one you'll get, and then you'll have this big line here. This is your, I think it's called your spinae erectae or something like that. Basically, it's your spinal erectors. These are two massive columns that go up your back. You'll see them over here as well. And they go all the way up. So as far as getting the basics of it, this can hopefully help. Your shoulder muscles actually attach to the bottom of the back of the shoulder blade here. So you see that. This is your shoulder blade attaching to the deltoid. And they do that all the way around. They also connect to the collarbone, right? Collarbone is here. We saw that it makes this shape. We saw that the trapezius does not overlap the collarbone. That's an important thing to make. So as big a shape as we make this, basically you have a deltoid that graphically wraps around and connects to the collarbone and connects to the shoulder blade. So not the best anatomy sculpt that you've ever seen there, but that's kind of the function of how those things all go together. And, the rest of this is all pelvis stuff. So basically diving into the pelvis, the obliques sitting here, attaching to the rib cage, and so on. And now we're wrapping around the front. But that's that. Get out of here, naked guy. Where were we? Yes, there it is. All right, let's wrap up this body. All right, we got about an hour and 40 minutes. Now I got some of these reference photos over here. We're going to go through some of these things that I want to add a couple ridges. I want to define if they're scales or some sort of a pattern. I would like to get further into the actual painting pattern. Those two, the ridging and the painting pattern, could come together, but they don't necessarily have to. That's more for costuming. It's more for details. I don't know if I want to do spikes. I don't love the idea of spikes. I kind of like this idea. But this is cool, though. I really like this image. The ridging on that is kind of what I was initially going for. If you've watched any of the streams of me making this character before, some of this is actually where a lot of what I was kind of thinking subconsciously. I was kind of thinking about some of these ideas. So you can kind of see the ridging that I'm talking about here. So let's do it. Let's bring some little spikes, get some ridging in here, get some color into the eyes. That was what I liked about this photo, was the color here in the eyes. But I'm going to have this photo up mostly as my big piece of reference. I'm not 100% sold on my color of the skin. I had just chosen green because it's classic dino. But I don't know if that's really what we want to go with. So we might shift it over. I don't want to do tan. I don't want to do like a brown. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to color pick this black, switch my standard brush to only painting. That's what this RGB thing is up here. So now I can paint. Even if I do this, it doesn't actually affect the sculpture in any way. Is it necessary to regulate the level of geometry increase and smoothing in ZBrush? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by smoothing. But you know, you don't want to subdivide in a million times just for no reason. I'll play with some ideas of kind of this line. I want a line to come off the body like this to kind of create a stripe of some sort, and we'll probably use that in something to create those ridges or assist in those ridges. But I'm deciding, like, do I want it to come down from here? I like the idea of this kind of coming out from here. I'm going to go ahead and change. There are some ways you can do overall color adjustment in ZBrush. Just going to do some tests. Done this a couple of streams ago, but like defining what the color, the base color is going to be is an important thing. Woo. Just kind of going through the gamut of colors here. I do actually kind of like the overall color that we were having. Green is just such a standard dino color. I've been sort of secretly wishing that maybe it was going another direction. I think we're going to end up in a variation of green, though. I don't know if it's this green. That's very green. We're also using a greenish shader right now. That's exactly the color I didn't want to go. Do orange and reds. I could do orange and reds. Kind of this look. Sometimes what I do, by the way, for another way to do this very quickly is I would just screenshot this or export this and then go into Photoshop and just paint over it several times, put some texture overlays. That's another easy way to do this. It's possible we could do something like this as well. Just going to try some things. This is probably not going to be what it ends up as. Almost certainly not, in fact. But it might give us a good starting point to run off of. Sir Peachy Orange. I just don't want to do that peachy orange look. That boa, which I thought was pretty interesting. Very bright colors, though. You can see this is kind of what we're looking at here. If we're going to go green, maybe we just go like a real green, you know? And then we could get a little darker if we wanted to. There's more design exploration than anything. There might be a reason from some of these colors. So that's kind of why I'm laying down the colors first as I'm exploring this rather than doing it the opposite direction, which is, you know, having the sculpt done and then seeing what comes out of it. It's like painting dentures. You're like, oh, there's no teeth in there. Hello, do I use Blender by any chance? I do not actually use Blender. Heard a lot of really good things though. Kind of like this blue that I found with this green. This is very much inspired by that Python we found. I'm not going to try to hide that at all. So what I'm actually going to do is just leave some of this little secret trick I do sometimes. Put it here. This is actually colored, but on the bottom of this foot. Just in case so I don't lose that. This is the original green we had down here, by the way. Have you watched Loki episode 1? I have not. Does smoothing generate new geometry? Yes, yes it does. I'm going to show his costume, which is not going to totally fit anymore. Let's see how this green is kind of taking it's definitely a lot of green. Now we're doing the model and working on the shoulders. Great, congrats. This is too green. This is just too green. Let's just pull back the value and the saturation. That was far more than I expected. I kind of like that too, though. Ooh. And then maybe we could get some like, I'll undo a little bit. I'm going to save this green. Go back to what we're talking about. Let's put it, right here. And let's get this. Put it right here. This is like a palette. I'm actually going to paint it those colors. We're using it as a place to store colors for the head. Get rid of this. We could do like they'd end up losing some of that coloring here. Kind of putting in a little bit of eyebrows. Some animals have eyebrows almost in their coloring like this, which I love. Any book or method to learn anatomy? I think figure sculpting is a really fantastic way to learn anatomy. Sculpting figures it forces you to understand the shape. It won't necessarily teach you the name, but it will force you to learn the shapes more so than I think traditional figure drawing will, because you have a good understanding of what it looks like from multiple angles and why it goes in a certain direction and all that fun stuff. I think I do like this green. How do we feel about this new green here? You just got a fresh coat of paint. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, there's that bright green. Let's erase that. I think the old one looked better. That's okay. It happens. If you were to join the head with the body, how would you do Dynamesh and then ZBrush or retop it directly? What do you do to stay creative when you hit a wall? Two very good questions. If I were to join the head and the body, I would Dynamesh it, then ZRemesh it. Yes. What I do to stay creative when I hit a wall, I take a break. Definitely just take a break. So this is where we were before, and this is where we are now. Definitely is easier to see this sculpting on the lighter one. Something we'll need to be aware of moving forward. Probably doesn't work as well with his costume. It's not bad. This was like designed with costume in mind, but I actually don't mind this. I think I can work around this. It's a little saturated for me, but we'll bring it home. See what we can do with it. Yeah, definitely take a break though. That's my number one piece of advice to anybody who gets stuck. Just going to put this here. We'll all remember it's there at some point. It will very likely be one of the accent colors or a type of accent color that we use, because I think that'll be kind of nice. Could do reds too, but I kind of like that teal. Somebody from YouTube says, I'm good at drawing, modeling, and also a student, so I want to do something now. So where do I start to enter the industry? You need to start applying. That sounds like it's your next step. Apply for jobs. Let's do a little airbrushing on this character. Pops in those muscles a little bit so they're not all one tone. Do the inside outside. So we're going to get these hands. This more tannish tone. Somebody's also commenting to make a portfolio, set up an art station. Definitely got to have one of those. Are there any considerable differences between ZBrush 2019, 2020, and 2021? Oh, you're trying to make me rack my brain here about what the actual changes have been. I would almost for sure say yes. I'm just struggling to think of what they were because I don't know the order of things that released. There's new dynamics. I think it's much faster. And I think the hard surface tools and the Z modeling stuff is probably better, more integrated. Let's get a darker color. desaturated. The likelihood that you will ever see the anatomy on this character is almost 100% zero. Like, you'll never actually see this. But I like to do it this way so that I know it's there. I'll see the arms for sure and the legs. Once we give him a shirtless scene, as all superheroes and heroes for some reason tend to have one. Gotta show off all those fitness gains. Cloth simulation, ambient occlusion masks are some of the bigger ones. Yeah, those are nice. Those are really good additions that they did. All right. This green is getting a little heavy-handed. I'm kind of okay with that. This doesn't mean we're going to be the final green or forever, as you can kind of tell from before. This is really just a direction we were going. Very kind of sculpting, just looking at forms, and so we're going to start dialing this in even further as we make it a real character. Any suggestions for ZBrush coloring tutorials? Not really. You just kind of think of it like an airbrush, I think, is the easiest way to treat it. So one thing I would recommend, and I'll do it here just to give you an example, is if I want to bring in another color, I'll actually switch my brush to a spray method or a spray model. Oh no. Oh no. All right, everybody, hang on. I'm going to remove this from the screen while I hope that this saves my file, because I don't really want to repaint that. I was just about to save too. Think of it like airbrushing, and also the idea of optical mixing, which is what I'll show you in a second. It's really easy to make your colors look really muddy in ZBrush. One thing in ZBrush I would recommend is to turn, whenever you're smoothing, when you hold down Shift, you'll actually see, let's see if it comes back. Sorry. You can blend colors together, just like you can smooth forms together. You can blend colors together as well, and I don't recommend you do that, because if you do, I think I covered it, or it recovered it for me. Sorry, just saving it now before I move forward. All right. I loaded the whole tool, so I'm just going to actually initialize ZBrush one more time. Cleared out the tool. I'll reload it. This is it with that red shader on. Just so you know, I'm switching back and forth between shaders, so I'm not settling on like a final color here. There's some ones you can download. Shade 1 is pretty good. This means it's a white. So this is what I actually in or painting in. Because I'm using these series of matte caps, it gives it a very different look. So you'll see even if I switch from this to the blue one to the red one, right, all of these are going to have looks. So I'm kind of just bouncing back and forth between somewhere that's in between all these different kinds of things. So hopefully it's in between. It's good. When I do final texturing and final coloring, I'll use or would use either the skin shade 1. There's some other ones which are like basically pure white materials, or you could just look at what it looks like on the flat color. So you can see it's actually pretty bright as compared to what it appears to be, you know, when you're doing it on this, for example, or this. Optical mixing is what we were talking about. So the idea of optical mixing and a couple tips for painting in ZBrush. The first thing I'll show you is turn your brush to a spray. This is what crashed it last time, so I'm glad it didn't this time. And then I'll turn my actual tip of my brush either to this one or to this one. Likely I like to use this one. You can also use this one, which looks like a lot of veins. That works pretty well as well. And what you'll notice is if you start spraying, well, right now it's just using add. So I'm going to turn add to RGB. My tablet is on the wrong screen. There we go. If I start spraying, you'll see that it's now doing lots of little dots. Turn lazy mouse off. And even though you can also adjust the color, right now it's adding some variance to the color, which I'm okay with. Again, when you're holding down shift to smooth, turn off RGB, because if you don't, you'll smooth it and it'll do this. And even though from a distance that appears to be the same colors, when you get up really close, that just looks like a really muddy mess, and those colors have blended in a way that's not very appealing. And so we want to use optical mixing versus digital mixing or blending of colors. So here you can see what I can do is basically add in these little bits of white, and it will, it still looks like I'm painting a lot of white, but when you get really, really close, it's just going to be individual hits of it. So I actually want to take the way that I like to do this. We'll use this green as an example because that'll be a fun color to paint on this. I'm going to go in here to my spray. I'm going to turn color. Is it color? Flow to 0. Nope, not that. Color to 0. Yeah. Change this color to 0. It won't add any other colors other than what you paint. Here, if you have this higher than 0, it will add in different flavors of the same color. And this is also the scale variance as well. So if you want it to always be the same size and placement variance, etc. So I'm going to turn down color, and I'm going to just be painting this color. I'm going to make this really tiny. I'm going to be pretty far away. You can make it like this too. But I'm going to just turn down my RGB intensity. This isn't turning down the value of the tone that I'm laying down, but it's just going to make it so I have to go over it many more times to get to that tone. So this can be really great for, let's say I want to add a greenish hue to something. Green actually might be a bad color. I'm going to use yellow. So for example, yellow I might want to add, or we'll actually use a pure red. So whereas before I could dial this in really hard, right? You see this, what the potential of the color is. But I want to use this value of the color, and I want to sprinkle it in. See, when I zoom in, it's just a lot of little dots, and you can see that poking through of those colors. This is a better way to add tones into your painting versus just spraying it in super hard. And you do this over and over and over and over. So I might come back with the original tone that I had and dial back on top of this. or the tone that should go here, which might be this one. Or whatever is on the top of the head here. And what you'll see is that now you get a lot of, we'll zoom in as far as we can. Maybe a little too far, but you'll see it's a lot of different colors all at once. Whether it's this darker green, this lighter tan, or this darker, more like kind of almost, you know, like a blood vessel of these reds. So then when you're at a distance, you can kind of see that, and you can always come in and tame it down or enhance it, whatever you want to do. But I find that this type of a painting style will result in a far more vibrant character than if you were doing it purely as, you know, something that didn't have that. So if I undo, you'll see before with nothing, and now with more, it looks like it was this green color. So I'm going to go back to this picker and push in a bunch of green here. It feels like I'm erasing it, but because I'm using this type of a brush, what you'll see is it doesn't actually go away unless I spend a lot of time going over it, which is really painstaking actually. And now when I zoom in, it'll still kind of appear to be all those colors mixed together. But from a distance, it mostly looks green. Just a little bit of warmth in there from that red. So if I want more red, kind of come in and use that same technique and then go over it. So many, many layers of color is probably the biggest recommendation that I can say. And utilize optical mixing of colors and try to avoid really harsh lines. You can come in here with that color variance up a little higher to even get subtle variance in the overall tone. So this is that big green we've been using. I can now come in with this color variance on and just kind of give it a little bit of a speckling effect and to not get this area here, which I seem to be able to do a bit way down here. Looks like it's still here. Okay, good. On the bottom of the feet is where I'm saving that color. So I can come in and erase this now. You can even see that there's that circle still under there. That's because I'm not really using heavy pressure on anything. And depending on what you're picking, it's taking variance off of that. So I'm constantly recolor picking as I'm going over this character to give a kind of a subtle texture to the skin. It's not a physical texture, it's not a sculpted texture. It's a painted texture. But you'll see even in this area, this is a very consistent gradient. And what I just did was just did a quick spray, but it's just adding a lot of little bits of that color in there. It's not changing it significantly, but it does make it more vibrant. Would you merge the head before the final model? If it was a production asset, very likely. There'll be a costume that'll cover the whole thing. So it's also, I don't really need to. But if it was going to be something that we would want to animate, have a full certain types of scenes that would be able to do that, then yeah, we would merge them. So just kind of quickly open up the previous one as well. I think it was this one. So this is before, this is after. And this might be a little heavy in the head, so I might just kind of come in here with this. I can always come back and switch to this green, hitting C color picks. So if I want to say like maybe let's bring some of this back in his head. I can do that. I think think I want to show more of the snout, kind of like this. It'll also allow for some of this redness to come through. So I'm really going to go over the top on this part, go a little darker, more saturated, speckling in those colors, and come back on top and push that back with the outside colors. You can still see there's a little bit of it kind of hovering around. If you look at your own skin and anywhere there's an opening in your body, your nose, your eyes, your mouth, there's always a little bit of color around there because of all the blood vessels and the warmth that those areas create. And then I'll put a little bit of fake shadow in there. Put some red in here, and around the eyes, I like the little red. Also, I can come in here and do purple or green. He's obviously got a lot of green already, but purple can be a color that can kind of add a nice bit of depth. Like if you look at people, maybe me if we zoomed in really close, lack of sleep or just kind of, the classic bags under your eyes, those are usually more purpley than they are red. So you can kind of bring this in. We could always dial this back with greens and other colors that make it feel more natural. So we could do that as well. However, I'm going to undo all that, throw a little bit of red in there. I do want to still define whatever that color it's going to streak off the eyes. Have I come up with a name for them yet? No, I have not. Good question. So I'm just going over each part of the body here because I have the spray on, and then I also have the color variants on. I'm just color picking in the local area, kind of moving my mouse or thing in a circle really quickly, and then just brushing. And that's just going to give me local variants of color so that it all kind of has this speckly effect versus the flat color. And this will give it just a little bit more life. Makes it feel more alive than like a consistent thing. This is how I like to use painting in ZBrush, is kind of just as a way to simulate texture colors that would take a lot longer to sculpt. We'll likely sculpt those in the last hour of the stream here because we have 1 hour left. I'll go ahead and try to integrate some of that in, but it's not the number one concern that I have. It's just it's easier to visualize the final result. All right, what are we on now? What are we doing? Edward, reminds you of Eddie Hall, huh? Interesting. Dial some of this back. Kind of enjoying where this is going. Let's see. Where were we with that green? That teal. It's been muddied up a little bit. We're going to have to find the perfect shade of it somewhere in this foot. That'll do. All right, is this what we want? Let's turn this off, turn this off. Whoop. It's a little like eyeshadow. And for the eyeballs, we use something different, but we might use this as an accent color. Turn the RGB but intensity all the way up so we can actually see it. I might run with that, I'm not sure yet. Still on the foot. So let's get this black back, or this dark color here. And we can paint our eyes real quick. Oh, it's always a fun addition to do. Right now we're just using black because it's an easy one. I don't really want it to be black. Am I on Twitter? No, I'm not on Twitter. Well, I am actually. I think it's at Droids for Sale in the same way that my Instagram handle is. Just like this. I don't use it very often. All right, let's run with that. I think I've got a good idea of where this is going, especially after going from here to here. We've got a much more solid landmark on it, where the anatomy is kind of in a direction that I'm enjoying, right? As far as how this is looking. Got those hands in a better direction. Colors working. So what we're going to do is the color can be resolved later. Do the eyeballs first, and then we'll do the ridges and stuff. There was the same photo that I was liking before, which is kind of on a couple of these, this style of eyeball. So I'm going to see what that would look like. I ended up spinning it, so it's kind of more like a goat's eye as far as the orientation is concerned. But it was this one. I thought it was super cool. So we'll get some of these tans and try to bring this in. You could obviously just drop that in as a texture. I could do that. That's no fun. All right, so I'm going to add a subdivision level to it. I'm going to color it with, turn this off, find a color that's close to what I'm thinking. This is close enough. Color, fill object. Don't forget we're using the white shader here, so this is what it's looking like. This might look really creepy. So a darker one may be the way we go, but we'll have to see. Turn off my dynamics on the slider there so that I can go even tinier. Just going to draw this line in before we do too much, just so I have it. I'm going to hide this body because we don't need to look at it. And let's take the spray that we were using and let's use this veins, which is over here. Spray. First, I want to get some warmth in here, so I'm just going to get a little bit of red. You can see what this spray does, which is really great. I'll probably redraw that black line in a little while. What it does, which is really great, is it adds things that look like veins. So even if this isn't going to be the overall texture, I can get some sort of like an underlying color to it, which is kind of cool. All right, so I think one thing that people get confused about when they think about texturing, especially in ZBrush, is that you're going to get it all in one swoop. But if you really do think of it more like airbrushing. If you've ever done airbrush or have explored airbrush, it's much more like that, where you're just kind of adding layer after layer after layer after layer after layer. So even if I go too far, come back here, I have this color, I can bring this back to something that feels like it's going to fit a little better, just to give it sort of a texture. Let's get in some more warmth, though. They have some really interesting colors on the outsides of these, and they're using like nature is using a really dark brown for a lot of it, which I think is kind of cool. Now this is going to be a little too big. Mask this off. Never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. Let's try a drag rectangle. Drag rectangle is obviously a little different. It's way too dark. Airlines are going this way. The reason that it is so low res is because the polygons are not high enough. In ZBrush, you're poly painting, which means you're actually painting individual vertices. So each one of these vertices is getting painted a color. So if you want your painting to be higher res, you just need to go up subdivision levels. It's saying something's going on here. Something hidden, something masked. It was masked. We'll make this 1,000,000 polygons and we'll be able to paint very crisp now. Not that we needed to do that, but otherwise I'll have a little faceting to it. So I'm just going to drag this in here, see what I can get as far as some textures are concerned. I don't think I'll use all of this. In fact, I might not use any of this. But if I come back here now, I'll switch this back to that spray. This color spray. A little intense. Dial the RGB down. Not liking that. Just too crisp. For distance, it's kind of working, but I don't like those things that I laid out there. Turning on the flow. So kind of going in with color, trying to knock it back, not really finding exactly what I want just yet, hoping that I can get something kind of pokes through though. If I need to, I can always come in with like a paintbrush, and the way that I'm doing it now, and just kind of start dialing in specifics. So if I want to start doing some of what I'm seeing in the reference here, just using the actual brush itself. Some of these lines in which are starting to work, but there needs to be a more central shape here, otherwise it's not really going to work. So what I'm going to do, I guess, is this alpha. Just try to mimic it. Is that working? Ugh, kinda scratchy, which I kind of like. Still not set on this though. Also I've been working with the eyes just being black for so long that it's kind of an adjustment if I want to do this style in general. Let's see. I'm not loving how this is looking. Should we try the old-fashioned way? Changing it to a different shader. See if this works. I haven't done this in a long time, but we're going to try ZBrush. We'll see how it goes. Basically, it gives me a Photoshop document. I can now paste in elements. So this is the actual, I'm going to hide the shading layer. This is the actual reference we were using. Crop the document just so everything's gone. You get a lot of shading artifacts and all kind of fun stuff with this, but this might get us closer in one shot. Yeah, you could use, somebody's saying you could use Spotlight. Not a big fan of Spotlight personally. Let's just drop this and see how it goes. Preserve the mask, turn this on, save, re-enter. Sure. Not terrible. kind of like this little purpley element that I'm bringing in. Too much though. This is the side with no projection. I kind of almost prefer that in a weird way. So the extra detail makes it really muddy. I'm also trying to design color at the same time, which I find to be very difficult. Not loving that. We'll run with this for now. I don't want to burn too much more time on stream with this. Turn this off, give a little bit of a shading effect because I don't really want to get into too much of that right now. Let's get in here, warmer color. We were using this shader before. I don't know if that is affecting this one. It's not. So this is stuck with that white shader. We're going to fill it with the flat color shader, which will turn off any automatic fill it has. So now it'll just kind of follow suit. So it's not a black eyeball anymore. If I put the toy plastic on, it might be more effective though. And then go back to this. So that's feeling okay. I do need to mirror this, so I'm just gonna, let's see what happens if I just do this the old-fashioned way. There we go. We don't have black eyeballs anymore. Are they perfect? No, but they'll be fine. For high frequency details, it usually better do that with texture maps, or should that be sculpted? That's personal choice. Some artists only do it by hand, or mostly do it by hand. I think, I think like Raf Rossetti is one who does a lot of stuff by hand, but there's some people, Chris Costa, I think, does most of his stuff by hand. But I also know a lot of people that do alphas that use texture XYZ, which obviously is a big thing that people use now. It is amazing and gives fantastic results. So it's hard to say. It's really up to whatever you like. Let's show the whole body. So this is where we were. This is where we are. Gonna get a little bit more character in now. As before you see, the first time you lay down a little bit of color, it's always kind of confusing because you're like, do I actually like this? And I'm not sure this is 100% where it's going to go yet, but you can start to see where it's like layer over layer over layer. It starts to get more, finalized. This has a very specific character vibe to it, and so does this. And it might need to evolve or turn over time, and that's okay. I still don't know if I like the color of these eyes. I kind of just want to make them darker. But I want to make sure that there's some sort of an iris in there as well. So on painting material, didn't want to do that. How long does it usually take to complete characters like these? That depends. If this were for a project, I would have tried to move faster. But since this is kind of just a personal project, I find that on personal projects I actually take longer because I have more time to work on them. And so I end up noodling on them, which is what I was talking about earlier, where you basically just sculpt on things, do things slower than you maybe should because you're afraid to make a decision and there's nobody telling you to hurry up. So on average, I would say like to do a full production character, most people would tell you it's about 4 to 8 weeks, depending on what the 4 to 8, not 48, 4 to 8 weeks, depending on what the needs of the character are. If there's anything super specific. All right, now that we've got this, we have about 30 minutes left in the stream, 40 minutes left in the stream. Got some sculpting details. Turn this off. Can't see anything. Let's turn this up. All right. I was doing some sort of a ridging. I'm going to keep this on. I have H as a hotkey for me, just so you know. H turns on my color, so if you see that happening, that's what that is. And I'm going to get some of that ridging and type of effect that I was kind of playing with here, or looking at here. Let's use... So I'm just using the standard brush at a really low size. Excuse me. Need to get that one out of here. I'm going to save really quick too before we get into this. I'm going to go ahead and, before I do this, I'm going to do leathery skin versus yeah, I'll do it really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and hit spray again. I'm going to turn back to that same alpha before. I'm not going to do scales. I might have ridged areas with a pattern, but I don't want to do full scales in the whole character. Get this out. And this is what it's going to look like when I use this. It's obviously not what I want. But at this size, and if we turn down the intensity to like 5, what you'll see is it can create a really simple pattern that looks kind of like this. So I'm going to spray this both in and out, adding and subtracting on the whole character. Very creating variation in the size of where I'm spraying, depending on what the direction is. If there's a lot of this stuff in there, I can go a little heavy-handed. I can also just come in, if it's too much and it's not working, go down a couple subdivisions and quickly smooth it. Even smooth it at a higher subdivision level. And then spray on that texture. I don't want that to be there. And the reason you do this is very similar to when we were doing it on the sculpture, or sorry, in the painting aspect of it. But this is, to me, kind of just beginning to remove some of that CG perfectness, which I kind of see as a real problem, because you don't want it to look perfect. And by its nature, CG is 100% perfect. So any of these little highlights, like these little highlights here that are super perfect, even there's variation in here, which helps a lot. Getting rid of that, it's a little subtle bump or divots will help quite a bit. I'm not going to go crazy in the eye areas or in the nostril areas. Just kind of a pass, a simple detail pass. This is not intended to be anything that's final quality. And you'll see as I start doing those ridges and details, which I'll probably focus on the head first. We might only focus and get done with the head today. That will pretty quickly move on. So some of these can be bigger in the back if we want them to. We can move thinner depending on what the character is. How do you retopologize the inner mouth if you sculpted it shut? You just got to either do it in Maya, or you sculpt the mouth open, and maybe in a separate mesh or the same mesh, and just sculpt it. It's not really an easy way to describe it. I'm giving them like an orange-like quality. I don't know if I really want the orange-like quality to be the final skin texture of this character, but so just layer one. Just like we were doing painting, we're going to sculpt this by hand, which is kind of what we're starting, or at least setting ourselves up to do. You could still put alphas on top of this if you wanted. Just giving it a breakup pass in some way. And you can use different alphas. You can use the veins one is actually very good for this. If you want to be a more leathery skin, right? And we might actually switch to that here in a little bit. Again, it's all about layers, so you can do layers of different types of materials. It doesn't always have to be the same material. or texture quality that you're trying to add. So like these abs maybe are slightly less bumpy and they go inward versus outward to create a subtle texture variation there. If you go over the whole thing in the same shape, the same size, the same everything, it's going to almost create the exact same problem, which is where now it all feels the same. So what we're hoping to do here is give a subtle variance and build our way into details. So let's go ahead and change this to the veins texture, and you'll see what I kind of mean on the body. Like this feels very much like an orange, especially on this deltoid. I can bring in other things. Turn the intensity up maybe. It's a little high, but you'll see how this one can bring in sort of like almost like a rhino-y texture on top of that. It doesn't need to be everywhere, so I could have that. I don't necessarily like this texture, but it is a skin texture we could use. It doesn't need to be everywhere, like I was saying. I could just bring it in sections. Maybe this is like a really vascular section. You know, quickly do that. Some crazy forearm veins. Cover some spots in the body, adding a couple more wrinkles and details from this. When do you think it's a better time to retopo, after finishing sculpting and before sculpting details? Depends on your process. If you're doing it for a game, you might not retopo till the very, very end. So there's never a perfect. I get that question a lot. People are always confused and wanting to know when the perfect time to retopo is. The general comment I would say about that is you shouldn't. That to me implies that you have, for lack of a better word, an underlying fear of retopo, and you shouldn't. Or you're unknown about what the process of when to do it or when not to do it is. It really doesn't matter. You could do it at certain points and it might be more optimal, but you need to be completely comfortable saying, you know what, we might have to change the entire topology on this character, even after it's all the way finished or a quarter of the way done, because that's how it might work in production. Somebody might tell you, we're changing the topology on our character, it needs to do something different, or you need to change it because the rigging team says so, or, you know, it's okay. Just got to go through the process a couple times. So I've added a little bit of this extra wrinkly skin down here, maybe a little too heavy, and I do kind of like some of this heavier stuff. You know, for example, just to give context, I'll pop up my ArtStation real quick to give you an example. When I was working on Iron Man, specifically this one, the model was nearly done, and they basically had asked to change all of the lines in this leg, all the panels, all the lines, the direction of where this was, changed all the details and everything in it to a completely different shape. Right, and that's not my choice. That was the model, that was the concept department, that was the execs, the producers, the director's choice. And so even though I was done, it doesn't matter because they want it to be different. So, you know, would that be the optimal way to make that character? Of course not. I would rather have known far in advance what they wanted it to be, but they didn't know what they wanted it to be. So they couldn't have told me. Let's go in with one more alpha. Ooh. This one is really great for super fine details. It is adjusting my form a little bit, which I'm not in love with. can see I'm actually sculpting with it. Not a big fan of that. So I'm going to skip that one. These are probably fine. It's also because my intensity is high. I don't know if we really need this right now, though. Yeah, we don't. All right, so now that we kind of got our first pass, I'm going to go back into this and this. I'll occasionally be switching over to my Damien standard brush. You notice that there's settings that are different per brush. So I'm actually going to take my standard brush and dial it up to 50. And it's going to be really small. And I'm going to end up doing things like this on it. Now that I have all of this surface detail that I didn't have before, so again, I'll compare and contrast. This is what we had before, and this is now. So it's not significant, but if I zoom in, you'll see the difference between all these little bits of detail that were not there. What this is really great for is basically now bringing in some hand sculpting elements. So, okay, I know that I want this to have a little bit of texture to it. I'm going to hide the body so I don't have to look at that right now. I'm going to take these little details in here that have kind of been added, again, before and after, all these little things. I'm going to use my Damien standard brush. I'm just going to start carving in on some of them. I'm going to do this further away so I can see the whole character, but this is a good opportunity. You can do this symmetrically or not. Just for ease of time, I'm going to do it symmetrically. So I'm going to grab little sections. I'm going to dial my intensity up quite a bit, probably back to 35 on my standard brush. So I can add some little imperfections here. So they're just like things like this. Bigger ones, so they're not all exactly the same and look like pimples. Maybe not symmetrical in every area. Switching to my standard brush. Damien standard brush. Really, really tiny. I like to use this to kind of carve forms. So I'm going to do this asymmetrically. Yeah, I'll do it symmetrically. But I've got this nice form here that's kind of meeting this right here. This plane and this plane. And I'm going to just kind of go amongst it like this. Following the surface of the form and then kind of going cross-hatching as well. I'm not going to do this over the whole thing. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm only doing it in some of these corners. I know it's probably a little hard to see it, so I'm going to zoom in just for you. I wouldn't necessarily work this close, but so the stream can hopefully see. And I'll use my numpad up and numpad down, or the brackets. Same way as Photoshop, you can adjust your brush size. And this is just basically sculpting and picking out some little areas here and there that I want to enhance. Enhance. I hate when this little bug comes across. There's a line that just got sculpted at some point. Sometimes you'll recognize those and have to undo till you find it. What I'm doing is I'm basically, like right now, see this little form here, and I'm just going to highlight that. If you're somebody who likes doing this, I personally really like doing this. It's kind of a zen thing for me to do. It does waste, quote unquote, waste time. If somebody wants to get it done fast, just use alphas. That's not cheating. Are you painting with geometry or normals? I'm painting with geometry right now. And I'm really just kind of trying to resolve shapes in a way that feel like they're natural. And this is why probably 2 streams ago, we basically just spent a lot of time sculpting on the head and sculpting on the body to resolve forms. If your sculpt is not at a place where your forms are resolved enough, this will just look like you're texturing a sphere. It'll look detailed, but it won't make sense as far as what you're actually doing on the surface. When I just started doing 3D, this was the most terrifying part of doing a character, was doing high frequency detail. I never could figure out how to do it. And what I kind of learned was just don't be afraid to make a mark, because you're going to have to make a million more marks till it's done. So if you don't like the first one you did, don't undo. Just make another one next to it, make another one next to it, make another one next to it. And eventually you'll have a whole bunch. If you don't like all those together, then maybe undo. But nobody's going to look at a single pore and be like, that doesn't look good. So the difference between what we just did and what we had is this. So you can see all the little details we've added. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to add some stuff up here. So this form here, I'm going to enhance that for a little bit and kind of create some little offshoots of it. Some sharp edges to it. Maybe it'll be a little designy. Right, create an interesting pattern of what shape this makes. Why? I don't know. Just want to try it. I don't necessarily like it. It looks like veins. You gotta try it. Must have a beefy computer. Not really. I mean, it's a strong computer, but this model is only 2.6 million, which may sound like a lot, but it's actually not. I would guarantee you that any off-the-shelf Alienware or general gaming PC for around $1,000 could do what I'm doing right now. It's not really about the machine. Let's go ahead and save this. You're going to see before and after where we got a little bit of detail on there and we're starting to focus in on this area. I don't really know what these forms here do in this region, but There's some stuff there, so I'm going to leave it there. Does the face retopo change? Face mask retopo change with more alien faces? Yes, it does. It's going to be unique to every character based on their proportions. Obviously, you know what they look like. But if they don't have a nose, you can't do a nose traditional face mask. There's obviously best practices, which is I kind of think what you're talking about, of having sort of a set type of things that you should be looking for. But you'd even kind of notice working in multiple places that certain people will have differing favorites. Rigging departments, animators will have preferred ways that some of the facial topology can be done. So there's never a correct. There's not 100% a correct face. I'm sure certain modelers or TDs would tell you that there is, but that's their opinion. Otherwise, everybody would use the same one. Usually, if you're working at a company, they'll ask that all faces, especially if they're humanoid faces, human faces, use the same topology. Whether it's a face and body, or they're joined or separate. Often they'll be separate. Character for a film or for a personal project? This is for a personal project. I don't think anybody would let me stream making a film asset live. If they'd like to, let me know. It's actually not symmetrical in the nose. So we'll have to sculpt some of this stuff down here asymmetrically, which is fine. If it starts getting too jacked up, I'll do it as long as I can symmetrically, but if it starts getting messed up, I'll have to switch. Do you have any suggestions on how to make hair? You keep getting stuck because it's too messy with line geometry. Are you using fiber mesh or something different? The thing with fiber mesh is you can make a mask. And with that mask, you can basically tell it to create a piece of hair in that object. If you're using XGen or something like that, I'm not super adept in XGen, so I can't really help you there. Back to this corner of the mouth, because I know that's symmetrical. Hello, what's up? What's up? We have 7 minutes left in the stream is what's up. We're just kind of wrapping this character up for today, I think. I'm enjoying some of the details we got into. Getting all this kind of extra level of detail in here. It's always fun. This means we're getting near the end of this character in a way. Not really, we have a lot of stuff to do on the costume and the body too, but we're getting close. Just hit the undo timeline instead of the draw size button. So it needs to think about the thousands of undos that have been stored. Here it is. Save this. All right. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. Would you say it's better to sculpt clothes or model them? You probably want both. Probably at least want a little bit of both, because I think modeling great clothes, especially nowadays, unless you're considering something like marvelous designer modeling, which I don't really consider it modeling. There's too many options as far as dynamics are concerned. Nothing you can do to enhance your skin detail is just going to do this across the surface, but really lightly, or just turn down your intensity to like 5 and go in the flow of the direction. You'll see over time what I'm kind of getting at, but I'm just kind of going and massaging the form in the direction of where it should be going. Or if there's like a little crevice, I'll kind of just poke at that back and forth, and that'll kind of do a little bit of texture on top. If you're interested in hand sculpting, it's not that hard to do. It does take a little more time. It's all about layers, though. Everything is always about layers, whether it's textural layers, sculptural layers, thought and iteration layers, reference layers. All about layers. And then some fun stuff you can do. We'll wrap it up here. I'm going to go ahead and save really, really quickly. I'll show you this one thing as soon as I save. Something you can do if you want to take this and push it even further. I'm not going to do this for good on my model, but I've got a good amount of detail. I'm going to the highest resolution now. I'm going to go to masking, mask by cavity. I'm just going to hit mask by cavity. There's options here. If you hit mask by cavity, see what it does is it basically does every single pore that we sculpted is now masked. If I hide this, I go to my inflate brush, at a very low setting, I'll say 5 or 4. This is what it kind of looks like. If you want really deep leathery skin, what you can do is you can kind of come over here. I'll give you an example where it will look cool. Inflate it so it looks bad while it's still masked, because I've just hidden the mask by hitting Control H. Inflate it like this so it kind of starts to overlap itself and looks really gross, and then smooth it. This can give you like scarred skin, burned skin, or even if you don't go that far, maybe we're over in this area, just push it out a little bit, you smooth that, and give you a different kind of texture as well. Something I usually do on every finish pass of every character is kind of go over certain areas and apply this technique. Just kind of fun. Something to think about for later. I'm undoing all that because I don't want to do that step just yet. It usually gives your detail that extra little pop and extra little push. All right, everybody. Well, we are just about to wrap up. Here's where we got to today. We reproportioned our character. We sculpted some hands, finalized our anatomy, painted some eyeballs, painted some color on their character, going from our sort of lime green here to a darker, richer green, which we'll eventually continue to tweak. Turn this off, though. Added some texture to everything, sculpted some details, got into some ridging. We're getting close. Getting close on this thing. Feeling good. Next up, hopefully in between streams, finalize the anatomy, the design on all this. See if there's ridging somewhere in the body. There probably will be. Finish up details. Hopefully I'll do that in between streams, and we'll get to finishing the costume soon. Eventually I want to get this to a point where we can do some 3D printing, because I'm super excited to keep using the Form 3, make some more prints. I'd love to see this character printed out soon. So that's kind of my next goal, is to get to a place where we can do something like this with this character. So, all right, everybody, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining me today on stream, and I'll see you soon next week, 2 to 5 Pacific. Thanks.